The lilies made the air too sweet, thick, overbearing. They clung to everything: my hair, my scarf, even the inside of my throat. I walked past the rows of mourners, some already dabbing their eyes, others just staring blankly at the closed casket up front. My son was in there, my only child. I thought nothing could hurt more than losing him. I was wrong. I'd just stepped into the hallway behind the chapel when I heard her voice. "Callie, at last, everything is finally mine," she whispered with a breathy chuckle. Someone giggled in response. Another woman. I couldn't see who. "She'll be out of the house by next week," Callie added. "We already cleared the back room." I stopped walking. My hand trembled slightly against the wall as I steadied myself. My knees were still healing from a fall last winter. But this blow landed somewhere deeper. I leaned closer, barely breathing. "She has no idea," Callie continued. "Mark made sure the paperwork's clean. She signed it all away years ago. Thought she was doing it for the family." She snorted. I didn't even have to ask. I stepped back quietly, pressing my lips together. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow, the air tighter than the scent of lilies. I turned around and made my way to the front pew again, ignoring the soft greetings, the pitying glances. My body moved like it was floating through water, slow and quiet. I sat down beside the empty spot where Callie should have been. She was still in the back, savoring the moment she thought she'd won. The minister began the service. I heard none of it. I stared at the polished wood of the casket and saw only the hand I'd held 3 nights ago, pale and fragile, reaching for mine as Mark whispered something I hadn't yet told anyone. Back then, I hadn't understood what he meant. Now, I did, and the envelope he gave me was still at the bottom of my bag. Callie came into our lives with a smile that could light up a room and a voice full of ambition. Mark met her sophomore year. She was studying architecture, always talking with her hands, always dreaming aloud. I liked her immediately. More than that, I admired her. She was confident in a way I never learned to be. When they got engaged, I told everyone. He found the one. He really did. I meant it. When Harold passed, the house became too big, too quiet. Mark didn't hesitate. "Move in with us." "Mom," he said, pulling me into a hug, "you shouldn't be alone in that place." Callie stood beside him, her hand on his arm, nodding. "We have the space. And with what we save on your house, we could make something lasting, something for all of us." It made sense. I sold the home where I'd raised my son, where Harold and I had planted fruit trees and painted every room ourselves. I handed over the money, nearly everything we had saved. "Use it to build something stable," I said. "Something the kids can grow into." They thanked me, promised I'd always have a room, that I'd never have to worry. At first, it felt right. We drank coffee together on the patio in the mornings. Callie asking me for advice about the kids, about school drop-offs and picky eaters. But over time, the questions stopped. My place at the table grew quieter. Callie didn't ask anymore, she told. When I wanted to babysit, she said they had other plans. When I suggested dinner, she said it would be easier if I just ate earlier. Still, I stayed quiet. Families go through rhythms. I believed that. But that morning at the funeral, hearing her words, I knew this wasn't rhythm. It was erasure. And I'd signed myself out of my own life without knowing what I was giving up. I reached down and touched the zipper of my purse, feeling the weight of the envelope still inside. I hadn't opened it since Mark gave it to me. Not yet. 2 nights before he passed, Mark asked to speak with me alone. Callie was on the phone in the other room, her voice hushed but clipped, talking to someone about final arrangements. The kids were asleep. The house felt hollow, like it already knew he was leaving. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a folder. Plain, manila, unmarked. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Only open this if she forgets who built this life." I took it without asking questions. His hands were cold, his skin papery. I held them for a while, longer than usual, because I think we both knew there wouldn't be another chance. I didn't open it the day he died. I didn't open it at the funeral. I opened it the night after, when the house had gone quiet and Callie's footsteps faded down the hall. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the room that used to be mine, before it turned into a storage space, and slowly peeled the flap open. Inside was his handwriting, familiar and steady, despite what the illness had done to his body. One page. "This is to confirm my revised will and intentions. I've named you as trustee for Ethan and Lily's future. I'm sorry it had to be like this." Below that, a notarized document, a new will, dated 6 weeks before he passed. There were statements from his retirement accounts, copies of property transfers, the house, the savings. Even the Tahoe cabin I hadn't known was fully paid off. He'd moved everything into a trust, with my name attached, not Callie's. And at the very back, paper clipped tightly together, were screenshots of emails, her name, another man's, plans, conversations, apartment listings in Arizona. I sat there, folder on my lap, breathing slowly through my nose. He had seen it coming, not just the cancer, but her. And while he couldn't save himself, he'd made sure to leave behind something far more powerful than anger. He left truth. And now, I had to decide when to use it. It was easy, looking back, to see how it happened. Not all at once, just one small yes after another. Yes to selling the house Harold and I built together. Yes to putting the $260,000 into their account so they could buy something bigger. Yes to letting Callie handle the paperwork because she understood real estate. And eventually, yes to signing a form that quietly removed my name from everything I thought we shared. I didn't even have a copy. They called it estate planning. Clean titles. Efficient transfer of assets. It sounded responsible at the time. Now I know better. I thought being part of the family meant belonging, but the longer I lived in that house, the more I felt like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. It started with Callie scheduling the kids' events without telling me. Then came the soft corrections. Actually, Ethan prefers almond milk now. Or, Lily gets overstimulated when you hug her for too long. She didn't say it to be cruel. But it cut anyway. Every comment was wrapped in politeness and dressed as concern. Then there were the sighs when I walked too slowly up the stairs. The way she'd take over when I fumbled with the remote. The subtle pauses when I entered a room mid-conversation. I kept brushing it off. I reminded myself how hard things had been since Mark's diagnosis, how much she was juggling, how grief made people edgy. But now, with the folder open in front of me, her words still ringing in my ears from the funeral, "She'll be out of the house by next week," I saw it for what it really was. I wasn't part of their life. I was part of their plan, a financial contribution, a built-in babysitter, a fading obligation. Mark had tried to warn me with his silence, and when he couldn't speak anymore, he warned me with a signature. I closed the folder carefully and tucked it back into my purse. Tomorrow was the will reading, and I intended to be there early. The law office smelled like pine-scented polish and old paper, a place built to hold serious conversations, and maybe a few secrets. Callie sat at the long table, her black blazer pressed, and her lips carefully painted, like this was another business meeting she planned to win. Her lawyer, someone slick in a navy suit and no wedding ring, flipped through a leather folio with calm confidence. I said nothing. I waited until the attorney, Noah Bradley, an older man with tired eyes, welcomed us and began to explain the process. Mark revised his will approximately 6 weeks before he passed. He said, looking at a document in front of him, He was very clear about what he wanted. Callie tilted her head. He never mentioned any changes to me. I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed the folder before finding the smaller envelope inside it. Plain, sealed, with my name written in Mark's handwriting across the front. I slid it forward on the table. He told me to give this to you. I said quietly, if she ever forgot who built this life with him. Bradley took it without a word, opened the seal, and unfolded the pages inside. For a moment, the room was still. Then he began to read aloud. The revisions were detailed and undeniable. The house, placed in a trust with me as lifetime trustee. The Tahoe cabin, purchased entirely in Mark's name, set aside for the grandchildren. His accounts divided 60% for the kids, 20% to me, 20% to Callie. A letter confirming he'd made the changes with full mental clarity. I didn't look at Callie. I didn't need to. I felt her stillness, heard her breathing shift. The silence that followed the reading said everything her posture couldn't. He can't do that, she finally muttered. He did, Bradley replied, and it's binding. My hands stayed folded in my lap. I didn't gloat. I didn't even blink. This wasn't revenge. This was what Mark wanted, and if Callie thought she could undo it, she had no idea what else he left behind. 3 weeks later, the summons arrived. A thick envelope delivered to the house I was still living in barely. Callie had stopped speaking to me except for clipped instructions about groceries or school pickups. The air in the house turned colder by the day. She'd hired a high-powered attorney, claimed Mark was not of sound mind when he changed the will, accused me of manipulating him while he was vulnerable. I expected the fight. Mark had warned me with every document he tucked into that folder. I called Marion Chen. She was sharp-eyed, calm, and didn't flinch when I told her everything. She's betting you'll back down, Marion said, that you'll be too tired or too broke to fight. Let's prove her wrong. When the court date arrived, I wore Mark's favorite brooch. Ethan sat quietly in the back row. Callie, dressed in muted gray and false grief, sat next to her lawyer and never once looked at me. The judge listened carefully as both sides presented their case. Then it was our turn. Marion placed the USB drive on the table. This contains financial documents showing the gradual transfer of funds from shared accounts to private ones, she said. Emails between Mrs. Harrison and a man named Derek, discussing their plans after Mr. Harrison's death, and recordings legal in this state of conversations indicating Mrs. Harrison's intent to institutionalize my client and liquidate all family assets. Callie's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. Then the audio played. It was her voice, clear and cruel. Once she's in that facility, we'll sell everything. She won't even know what happened. The courtroom went still. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just sat with my hands folded, listening to the truth echo back at her. Mark had known. He had gathered everything. And when he couldn't speak for himself anymore, he made sure the truth still could. Marion stood beside me with quiet strength. We're not here to destroy her, she told the court. We're here to honor what Mark Harrison wanted. Nothing more. The judge nodded. And then she called our first witness. I didn't recognize him at first. Tall, clean cut, the kind of man who looked like he belonged on a magazine cover, not in a courtroom. But when the clerk called his name, I heard Callie's breath catch. Derek. He avoided her eyes as he took the stand, swore in with a quiet voice, sat straight but tense, like he'd been carrying something heavy for far too long. Marion approached slowly. Mr. Baker, she said, can you tell the court how you know Mrs. Harrison? He hesitated, glanced once toward Callie, then looked at the judge instead. We were involved. For about 1.5 years. Romantically. Yes. Callie stood up suddenly, slamming her palm on the table. You liar, she snapped. Sit down. Mrs. Harrison, the judge said sharply, or I will have you removed. She sank back into her seat, eyes burning. Derek continued. She told me her marriage was over in everything but name, that she was only waiting until he paused, until Mark died. And what did she plan to do afterward? She said they'd sell the house, move to Arizona, start over, just the two of us. She said her mother-in-law was a burden, that once the will was in her favor, she'd put her in a facility and never look back. The words landed heavy in the room. Even her lawyer looked shaken. Marion handed Derek a stack of printed emails. He confirmed each one. They matched the screenshots in Mark's file exactly. It was all real. I sat still, my fingers laced together in my lap. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at Callie. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about truth. And Mark had made sure it would come out even if he couldn't be here to say it himself. The judge recessed for deliberation. No one spoke as we left the courtroom. But when I stepped outside, Ethan was waiting. He didn't ask questions. He just took my hand and said, I want to come home with you. And I knew then we had already won. The judge upheld the will in full. No amendments. No delays. No second chances for Callie to twist the truth one more time. The house stayed in trust. Just as Mark intended with me as trustee, Ethan and Lily's future was secured, protected from chaos and covered in quiet certainty. The accounts were frozen, reassigned, and rebalanced. Every piece that had been moved in secret was now laid bare and corrected. Callie took her 20% and left town 3 weeks later. There was no tearful goodbye, no apology, not even a final glare. She packed fast and moved faster, slipping out in the middle of a Tuesday. Derek apparently already out of the picture. She left behind her expensive throws, her glass vases, the cold decor she'd once insisted made the house feel elevated. All I saw were corners that had forgotten how to breathe. The morning after she left, I unlocked the master bedroom. The door creaked, like it hadn't been opened all the way in months, maybe years. I stood in the center and turned slowly. The sleek bed frame, the perfectly curated pillows, the silent white rug, none of it felt like Mark. None of it felt like me. By the end of the week, it was gone. I donated the bed to a shelter, sold the designer lamps, pulled up the rug. In their place, I brought in a sturdy oak frame, the quilt Harold's sister had made for our wedding, and a soft reading chair that faced the window. I set Mark's photo on the nightstand. The light in that room shifted instantly, like it recognized something had come home for the first time in years. I closed the door behind me and felt like I belonged. Ethan and Lily moved into the adjacent bedrooms. We settled in quietly, without ceremony. At breakfast, Ethan said, "It feels different now, like we can breathe." He was right, but healing wasn't instant. And what came next wasn't just about furniture or paperwork. It was about the two children who had lost more than their father and needed someone who would never leave. The kids gradually adjusted to the new rhythm of life. They didn't cry every day. Grief isn't that tidy. It came out in other ways, Ethan snapping at his sister over nothing, or Lily bursting into tears when we ran out of the cereal she liked. I learned to let them feel it, to sit beside them without fixing anything, and let silence do what words couldn't. We started family therapy. At first, it felt strange, all of us sitting on that couch with the tissue box between us, but over time, it helped. It gave them language, gave me room to listen. They asked questions. Of course, did Dad know about Mom and that man? Why did she want to send you away? I never gave them more than they needed. Just the truth, gently handed over like something fragile. I told them their father had tried to protect all of us, that he loved them completely, and that their mother's choices weren't their fault. Callie called on birthdays, and sometimes on holidays. Her voice was clipped, bright, overcompensating. The kids didn't talk long. Ethan passed the phone back within minutes. Lily waved politely and wandered away. I didn't stop her. I didn't push. Love, I'd learned, doesn't vanish when someone disappoints you. But real love, the kind that holds steady, doesn't demand that you ignore the hurt just to keep the peace. We kept going. We built new routines. School drop-offs. Saturday pancakes. Sunday hikes. Quiet evenings with board games and hot cocoa. And then one night, after dinner, Ethan asked about the business, not the money, the legacy. 2 years have passed. The house feels different now, warmer, quieter, and somehow more alive. Or, not because we filled it with things, but because we stopped walking on eggshells. The kids laugh louder now. They slam doors, make messes, leave dishes in the sink. It's normal. It's noisy. It's ours. I run a small weekend art program out of the converted garage. Nothing fancy, just a folding table, some easels, a few curious neighbors and grandkids from the school down the road. We paint. We talk. We forget the clock for a few hours. It's enough. I host dinners now. Real ones. Roast chicken and garlic potatoes. Friends I hadn't seen in years come by, bringing pies and stories. We light candles. We clink glasses. We breathe without watching our backs. In the mornings, I sit by the kitchen window with my coffee, legs tucked under me in the chair Mark used to call too soft to be respectable. The sunlight hits just right through the east window. I keep his photo on the windowsill, beside the little potted thyme Lily planted in an old mug. Sometimes I talk to him. Nothing dramatic, just small things. Ethan got into the honors program. Lily's sketchbook is filling faster than I can buy paper. I fixed the leaky faucet. You'd have hated how long it took me. And sometimes I say thank you. Thank you for trusting me, for preparing for things you hoped wouldn't happen, for seeing what I didn't want to believe. You protected us, I whisper, tracing the rim of my mug. And we built something real. Callie hasn't visited. She sent a card once. No return address. The kids opened it, read it, and tucked it into the junk drawer without a word. Neither of them mentioned it again. The business still stands. Ethan started shadowing the board meetings. Lily helps organize the design studio. We don't talk about legacy like a burden anymore. We talk about it like a bridge. And this morning, Lily asked if we could go to the lake cabin next weekend. So I went upstairs and started packing.